Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report reaction for Tuesday, April 7, 2020. Damian Nelson sitting here alongside David Octavius. Which way are you? Octavius, the Tiberius, the alleged backyard, one-time knockout, straight-edge, hardcore, Hall of Famer hero. And how the heck are you here on a Tuesday?
You know, I am comfortable, I'm relaxed, and I feel silky smooth.
You look comfortable, you look relaxed, but I'm not sure silky smooth would apply.
Well, I mean, you're not here to see, but I am, trust me.
What'd you think of Raw last night, David?
You know, obviously they had a very small crew going last night. You know, Zelina Vega and her group and the Street Profits and Bianca Belair got a lot of TV time. They made 3 matches out of 1 segment.
It's long.
Which I think is great for them, the younger talents, to get more exposure. And then who would have thought that Aleister Black would go 3 segments with Apollo Crews last night? Amazing.
Who would have thought Apollo Crews
But again,
would have
that
been
was a
on
good
Raw?
match. Right, but you know what, though? For a guy that is very seldom on TV, I thought he held his own very well with Aleister Black.
Yeah. Well, folks, we are live, as I said, and thank you for joining us here on Fight TV. Also, across all of our social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And it's a special night for Reaction David Hero because, you know, we've been blabbing our gums for the last week and a half, if not longer, about WrestleMania. And WrestleMania 36 is in the record books after this past Saturday and Sunday. Unless you want to count the main event after the main event that we saw on Raw last night between Drew McIntyre and The Big Show, well, we've been talking a lot about it. But you know, we like to go to the source. We like to go to the people who actually know things, and I'm pleased to tell you that our guest tonight is that person. And very, very happy to welcome a longtime friend of the show, joining us from, well, I think that's where all the magic happens. Please welcome Shane Helms to the Pro Wrestling Report reaction. Shane, how are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. Right off the bat, I need to compliment Dave on his shirt. That's a tremendous shirt you got on.
That is, and you can get that at collarandelbowbrand.com.
Look at that already, right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Well, Shane, thank you again for joining us, and I want to back up actually to a little bit before WrestleMania, and when you got the news, and especially with your role with WWE, when you got the news that things were about to get a little crazy, and how accelerated that happened, and how quickly that happened, and how you had to react personally to what you thought you were going to be doing to what you ended up actually doing.
So what exactly is the question?
When this whole shutdown thing started and WWE found out they wouldn't be able to go to towns, do the live shows, things had to move to the Performance Center, which was the week right after NXT had already been planned to be at the Performance Center. What were those initial things, the initial changes that you had to make with what you had planned to do, whether being on the road, going to shows, planning segments, whatever it was? What were those initial steps of this coronavirus pandemic, the impact they had on you and your plans?
I mean, I think for like most people, WrestleMania weekend, we all pack it with as much stuff as we could cram into 1 week. So a lot of plans, you know, I plan to see you guys, you know, different other things that just had to make some adjustments. As far as work, for me, that just became a cancellation of everything. I haven't left North Carolina since it started. You know, I started adhering to the protocols and stuff early on, you know, 6-7 weeks ago. You know, I kind of took this stuff a lot seriously than most people did. So, you know, it's been different. You know, it's nothing like I've seen in my lifetime, and you guys are, you know, in my age bracket, except for Dave, of course. You know, he's, you know, I mean, dude, for 65, you look amazing. You have to say that.
Hey, you know what? I'm doing my best. Yes.
But speaking of which, you put up, I don't want to change the subject, but you put up a picture of your son today on Facebook. And when are you going to stop this gimmick? Because he's at least 30. You try to have these kids in high school, He's out there with these high school kids just beating them up. He's at least 30 years old, and you're gonna have to come clean about it.
You know what the funny thing is he's a high school senior, but actually where his birthday fell, he really should be a high school junior this year. So he's actually younger than 30, believe it or not.
He's at least in college. On his 50.
Cheers. so obviously,
yeah,
go ahead.
That was a lot of what the producers did. They used a lot of the Florida-based producers and stuff like that. So I haven't had to. I've been giving my feedback on certain ideas on stories and stuff like that. But as far as me personally, just I've been in North Carolina.
Well, tell us about the actual role of a WWE producer, because I think a lot of fans out there watching think they know, but they may not actually know what it is you and the team of producers for WWE are responsible for and do on a show-to-show basis.
Without giving away our secrets, we're basically, you wear a lot of hats. You're a coach, you're a mentor, you're a middleman between creative and the talents. You're a part of creative, at least on the outside edge there. You take creative's ideas, you try to make them as good as you can. You try to help talent grow and evolve to be the best they can be, and you don't get thanked for any of that. But it's rewarding in a really different way when you got an idea and it works out, and you see a talent take your idea and it works. It's very rewarding. So I'm enjoying it. It's a little bit of different. It's a learning experience. I found some success with it in TNA. And so I knew with my success there that I could be really good at this. WWE, obviously a much bigger machine with a lot more eyes on you. So the pressure, of course, increases with that. But, it's a hard job to describe.
Yeah. Shane, when you talk about creativity, going into WrestleMania, like you said earlier, this is something we've never experienced in our lifetime. How crazy must it have been for producers, for creative, for talents to put together matches, knowing that certain things most of the parts of the match are not going to get a reaction at all because there's no fans there, and hoping it resonates well over TV. Now, you may know what it's like from being on the indies way back in the day when you're in front of 10, 15, 20 people sometimes. But there's no way to prepare yourself for going into a building with no fans. What advice did you give or would you have given to the people going forward with their matches at WrestleMania?
Just type the work. It's sometimes when the crowd starts reacting, you get lost in the moment of the reaction. When you don't have that reaction, you really got to focus on the actual wrestling and performance art of it. So it's really, really different. Like when you're training and coming up in the business, and even those smaller shows, like I remember me, man, Jeff were on a show one time. They had 4 paying customers. I think there were 9 total people in the building, but only 4 actually paid. And you still go out there and you work, and you work as if you're getting that reaction, but you're not. So the pacing has to be different. I kind of, when we started having these no audience shows on TV, it kind of reminded me of some of the older Japanese wrestling that I would watch growing up, when there would be people, but they wouldn't react. The Japanese audience just, have a different way of reacting. And it reminded me a lot of that. So just my advice to them was just, stiffen up, lay it in, it's just going to be different. But I think it amplified and emphasized something that, I've known all along, just how important that audience is. And I think it's more so than any other sport-related, form of entertainment that there is. I can watch any sport and not care about the audience. If I'm watching football, I don't care what the audience is doing. If I'm watching basketball, I don't care. Even I watched UFC without the audience. That didn't bother me at all. Watching wrestling, what we do, the audience is such a big, huge part of the dynamic, and we miss them.
It's interesting that wrestling has always been looked at unique and different, and not just for what happens in the confines of the squared circle, but the point you just made that the audience does play such a huge role. And while it may not always be a beneficial role, it's a role that goes into, I would assume at least, the planning of what the show is going to be. Obviously, huge plans made to what the show was going to be for WrestleMania, but we did come out of it with several newsworthy things. Before we get to that, several people either chose to or were not able to appear as part of the show. Lots of changes to what was planned to what actually ended up being presented. And with all that internal conflict, if you will, you had the question of whether or not you guys would actually be able to do the show at all. When was it decided that the show would go on WrestleMania 36?
I mean, that wasn't a meeting I would have been involved in. You know, I'm still just barely over a year in the company, so that wasn't a discussion that involved Shane Helms whatsoever. So I literally just check my phone every day. You know, I got a work phone, and I would check it several times a day just to see what the updates were. And I don't know if there was ever a discussion about not doing it. You know, not seriously. I think the goal was always to give the WWE Universe something, you know, no matter what it could have been, to give them something. And, you know, a big part of preparing for this situation that we're in is preparing for the end of it, that there's something on the other end and we continue with this. And so, I mean, like I said, I never heard any discussions about it not happening at all. And it was one of those things I was just rolling with the punches. And I think that's what a lot of people were doing.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you think it says about WWE that with everything else essentially in the world shut down, that they did indeed do everything in their power and everything possible to, as you said, deliver to the WWE Universe?
I mean, I think it's just like I just said, they're preparing that we're going to get through this. Like, and no matter what, that there's going to be life after this. And, I mean, we're entertainers, you know, and when you have the entertainment mindset, you know, it's different than, you know, other mindsets. Not that it's better or worse, it's going to be different. You know, I joke all day long. I drive my family crazy. Like, that's just who I am. I'm an entertainer. I want laughs. And it's not even an attention thing. It's just I like them laughing. I like to see them smiling. So, you know, from that aspect, I loved it. I loved that WWE was able to provide something to entertain people when everything else on the news and the TV and social media right now is just, I mean, just awful. And it's awful because we're living it, and that makes it worse. But like I said, I'm proud that WWE was able to do something, you know.
Well, for us, it was
situation, but it was something.
For us, it was a big lifesaver because for Damien and myself, you know, we were busy with WrestleMania all weekend. We didn't have time to sit and watch the news and worry what was going on with everything else. We were watching WrestleMania, putting out content for the show, and it was a nice change of pace, at least for 48 hours.
Yeah. It was. Like, I sat in here, I watched. I'm in where the magic happened, as Damien said, because Karen, the H2H Empress, she works from home too, so she's commandeered the kitchen, and that's where her multiple computer screens are set up, and she's actually on a conference call right now. So I'm in here, but you know, I got a big screen in here, and all during those days of WrestleMania, it was just like, man, this is a relief.
Yeah,
you know, it was a break. That's what entertainment is, and that's what it should do. You know, make you forget about some things for a while and take your mind off of it.
You know, it's interesting. You watched WrestleMania from home, just like all of us did, and you were going to be at WrestleMania, so you saw and were able to react to the same things that we were at the same time, which is a bit of a unique spot for you as of late. But two things we saw that really had the fans talking this past weekend at WrestleMania were the two movie matches, I guess we'll call them. And I don't say that to knock them, because I think they both came off differently in great ways. But the Boneyard match with The Undertaker and AJ Styles, and then the Firefly Funhouse match with Bray Wyatt and John Cena. How did those strike you when they aired on Saturday and Sunday nights, watching as a fan?
I think they were just what we needed. You know, we had a bunch of empty arena matches. I don't know if two more empty arena matches would have made WrestleMania better. I don't think it would have. I think this made those matches stand out. It made them different. It made them unique from everything else that was being presented. You know, and it's involving four huge superstars, four huge names in the business, 4 world-class talents, you know, and I think they just killed it. They were both really different, you know, Undertaker and AJ. I mean, that was a fight, you know, a street fight, however you want to describe it. Boneyard was what it was called, but I mean, these are 2 guys. There wasn't a lot of no arm bars, you know, no drop toe holds, no tackle drop down, get it again, Al Snow, none of that. These are 2 guys beating each other to death, and I thought that played out really well. And then you get the Firehouse Funfly, and you got, what, did I say that right? Firefly.
It was close enough.
Yeah, you know what I mean. What's up with that?
Yeah.
And just the supernatural element of the Fiend, I thought was fantastic. I was popping constantly during that. So, and I think a lot of people was. That was not what I was. And so it really caught me off guard. I watched both of those twice, and I think anything you rewatch, that's the biggest recommendation you can give it.
So, Shane, there's a lot of interpretation at Firefly Funhouse match. As a fan watching it from, you know, the place where all the magic happened, what was your interpretation of how that match was?
I mean, I think it looked like it was a biopsy or an autopsy of John Cena of his entire career. And it was just, I mean, both of them digging into each other's past. When Cena showed up in his old school gear, I immediately lost it. I mean, I was on board for that. And man, how he's still in incredible shape. But seeing those little shorts, and he used to have, I think he had like 60 pair of boots and shorts. And for every city we would go to, those little trunks and boots would match the Celtics or the Broncos or whatever we were going. He had all of those things. So that, and I just knew that from knowing him. So I just popped for that. And all the and I've seen some of the online theories about what it all meant, and I think a couple of them are pretty close. And I say that I wasn't involved in that match at all. You know, I'll be honest. I wish I could say, you know, but I don't take credit for anybody else's work. I wasn't involved in that, so I loved it. I didn't know what was coming, but when they did like the Bella's entrance thing or whatever, which one it was. Which one used to date John?
Nikki.
So when the throwback to that, just the bodybuilding stuff, the NWO stuff, which was kind of, I mean, you know, to me that was a reference to Cena never being the bad guy like Hulk did in the NWO. And I guess it's up to interpretation, but that's how I took it. Just all of that, I thought was fantastic. And did this match even really happen, or did it just take place in the minds of John Cena? Who knows? But I really enjoyed it. But you know, I mean, I'll be honest. You know, I'm a comic book guy. I love stuff like that. You know, I mean, I was an amateur wrestler for 7 years too. I do love just the knit and grit mat work of a Kurt Angle and that type of style match. But I also love this type of stuff. And you know, I think we had a lot of wrestling at WrestleMania, and then we had this, and I loved it all.
You know, it's interesting as you talk through that. A lot of people have given that same feedback. This match, specifically the Firefly Funhouse match, meant so many different things to so many different people who were watching. And there were so many, I guess you could call them Easter eggs, if you will, or meanings in there that can be interpreted in many, many different ways. That takes a stroke of brilliance. And not only does it take a stroke of brilliance to do that, but on short notice, because you've got to assume that these matches, both of them, changed before the change to WrestleMania and how they were going to be presented. But so many just little morsels coming specifically from that match with Cena and Wyatt. And then you had the true movie feeling of The Undertaker versus AJ Styles, which that on Saturday night really, really blew people away for its quality. And I think it was a challenge for WWE to make the two matches different, and they did so tremendously well.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something I want to see on Monday Night Raw every week by any stretch. But for something like this and this scenario that we had with the competitors involved, I think it really worked.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, Dave, in our shows over the course of the weekend, especially the reaction shows on Saturday, people were saying, we want this every week. We want Undertaker to have his own show. Well, he sort of does now on the WWE Network. But they said they wanted a match like the Boneyard Match every week, or every year at WrestleMania, or every pay-per-view. And we tried to explain a little bit why that may be a good or a bad idea, but you just said, Shane, you don't want to see it all the time. What's the reason for not having something like that on a regular basis?
I mean, because it's still a pro wrestling show. You know, I still at my heart want to see wrestling. You know, I like this every now and then. You know, I like the icing on the cake, but there's always more of the cake. You know, I will go to a lot of food analogies here, but I don't know. It's just so different. Maybe if it happens more and more, and it becomes more and more in tune, I can grow with that. But it's so different that I don't think you want to throw a lot of that at the audience too quickly and too much. You know, so on a weekly basis might be too much.
And Shane, wouldn't you agree you also need the right characters for that match? I mean, The Undertaker was the perfect guy to have in that style match.
Yeah, he was perfect for the Boneyard match. And even though the dead man version of The Undertaker is historically a supernatural character, that wasn't what the Boneyard match was. They saved the supernatural stuff for the Fiend. And so that's very interesting to me. So I think going in the future, if the traditional Undertaker returns, we can do something that's supernatural with him as well, but we didn't really need it for the Boneyard.
Thank you for the analysis of those two matchups. Can't argue with any of those facts, actually, but WrestleMania also gave us two big title changes. We saw on Saturday night Braun Strowman replacing Roman Reigns become the Universal Champion, defeating Goldberg. And Dave, you had some unique views on this match. The world had a various amount of different views on this matchup. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great for Braun, and it seems, Shane, that what's lost on a lot of the fans is that this is exactly what they've been asking for: Braun Strowman as champion.
Yeah, what was Dave? What was your feeling?
Well,
here we go.
I thought that it was a waste of time and effort and money by just bringing Goldberg in to do a 2-minute and 20-second job match to Braun Strowman, because the money was supposed to be Roman Reigns and Goldberg. They could have held on to that match. They could have had Goldberg, in a battle, beat Braun Strowman, and then at maybe SummerSlam have the big Roman Reigns Bill Goldberg match. Because right now, in my opinion, Bill Goldberg it can only be considered now a transitional champion in the WWE. His last two title runs, he's been one and done. He cannot defend the title. And once again, it proved that. So his value, in my eyes, means absolutely zero going forward.
I wouldn't say it's zero. I think it's still higher than when he left the WWE the first time. I thought his value was completely done back then. But we've seen in recent years that it was brought back. It just wasn't an ideal situation. I mean, why they chose to go with Braun and Bill at WrestleMania instead of postponing and doing Bill against Roman Reigns, I guess that's a decision that's above my pay grade. And I think there's a lot of decisions that are above my pay grade. I mean, I don't know how you just not have the Universal Championship match at WrestleMania. That's one of the top two titles. I think it has to be defended. The challenger had to pull out, but the champion didn't. Mm-hmm. The champion should have defended, and I think that's the decision. I'm guessing that's the decision that they went with. And Braun, there's been times when I thought Braun was ready, and then it seemed like things, for whatever reason, didn't work out. But I'm interested to see where he goes with this. I think Braun has I think there's a huge upside to Braun, as champion. So it's going to be interesting. We had the Fiend, who was the indestructible Universal Champion for a while, and now we got Braun. So it's going to see who. The most interesting thing is who's going to challenge him, and I think that's the for Drew McIntyre as well. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is who's going to challenge him. Those are two big. That's like the two biggest guys on the roster, and they're both at the top of their shows.
And they're both baby faces. They're both legit 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" baby faces, which hasn't happened since the Hulk Hogan and Diesel era.
Yeah, and that Hulk Hogan era made a lot of money, so.
Yes, they did.
I can't argue with that decision.
We just got to find a few King Kong Bundys, John Studds, and one-man gangs now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely what we need.
So, Shane, talking about Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre. You've known Drew for quite a while. You worked with him back at TNA. You've seen him as part of 3MB. You saw him go overseas, work on his craft, transform his body, come into TNA, become the world champion in TNA. How is it for you to watch that journey of a guy that seems like everyone has nothing but love and respect for, finally climb that mountain and defeat Brock Lesnar?
Yeah, in our business, some championships are given to you. Some are actually won. I've talked about this in my personal career. When I came to WWF at the time, they gave me the European title. That was just a get-over title to get me over. That's not one I won. When me and Rosie became the tag team champions, we won those because we worked hard and we deserved them, and we got over despite not having the best push of all time at that time. And when we came back through the curtain, there everybody is, the whole roster there with a standing ovation waiting on us. Our championships, they're our Oscars, they're our Emmys. They should mean something. So to see a guy like Drew, and I was there for his first run, and we used to go out and get in trouble, and he was a young kid, and I wasn't young, but I still thought I was. I still think I am. And then him being released, seeing him on the Indies, seeing him in TNA where he won their main title, which I think PWI doesn't like TNA for some reason. That's a recent thing you guys can talk about amongst yourselves. I'm not allowed to talk about other companies. Not that I'm not allowed, but it's probably not wise. But to watch Drew's work there and watch how hard he was working out in the gym, and I mean, just to see a guy that goes, okay, it didn't work for me this one time. That's okay. I'm gonna show him. I'm gonna show him that they made a mistake. And to his first run, he wasn't ready. It wasn't that he was buried or not given opportunities. He wasn't ready. You see who he is now. It's a huge difference than who he was then. Mm-hmm. A huge difference.
Physically and mentally. A lot of people by his own admission in his documentary that aired on the network this past weekend, he too says he wasn't ready. It wasn't his time.
Yeah, I mean that's the case for a lot of people, and I see it with the online stuff from a lot of fans. Like, this guy just needs an opportunity, or this girl needs an opportunity. The opportunities are there, but sometimes the talent, whether they realize it or not, they just aren't ready, for whatever reason. But when it comes together, when you see it coming together for somebody, like it's been slowly coming together for Drew for a while, because I've been working with him on a lot of live events, seeing the crowd reaction to him just grow and grow and grow. And you guys seen that on TV over the last 6 months, I would say. Just his reactions, just the audience starting to really believe. And when you get the audience believing in somebody, that's when the magic really starts to happen.
And it has happened with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre becoming the new World Heavyweight Champion this past Sunday night at WrestleMania, defeating Brock Lesnar in very, very quick fashion Sunday night. Another quick match, and you likened this one to the matchup we talked about with Braun Strowman and Goldberg too, did you, David Hero?
I did. And I didn't feel like, even though Shane's saying he won the title, he earned it. He did earn it. He earned that spot. He earned the championship. But I felt that Brock Lesnar didn't give him the match where he earned the match with him as well, because it was just an exchange of F5s and Drew's big kicks, and it was just a dozen moves within 5 minutes, and you have a new world champion. I think that if Drew would have been given an opportunity to actually battle with Brock Lesnar and have the real big fiery comeback to beat and slay the beast, I think it would have done more business for Drew going forward. Because like I've said, now if the next number one contender is a Seth Rollins, or let's say Aleister Black or Kevin Owens, well, you got to believe that Drew McIntyre has to beat those guys in less time than he did the beast Brock Lesnar. So going forward, I just think it's going to be a challenge. I'm sure most wrestling fans will have forgotten by then, and I just look at it differently. But for Drew McIntyre to truly become that beast and that guy, I think Brock could have done a little more for him.
I see what you're saying. I'm okay with short matches though, because as a huge boxing fan and huge MMA fan, short fights happen all the time. You know, Conor McGregor won a world title in 13 seconds against a guy that was pound for pound the absolute best fighter in the world. So did that mean that anybody that beat Conor can now beat Jose Aldo in less than 13 seconds? That's not what that means. I see your point though, and I think maybe with a crowd audience that we might have had a little bit of a different match. But in the last couple years, I've also seen that Brock enjoys those short matches. He doesn't mind being vulnerable at times, despite him being the beast and the conqueror and all these things that he can be at the snap of his fingers. He also shows a vulnerability that makes him, to me, way more interesting than, you know, the unbeatable King Kong. You know what I'm saying? So it's all storytelling, and stories can, you know, how we go forward with this is going to be the trick, you know.
And going forward, Shane.
But after Edge and Randy was super long, I wanted the short match. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it either.
Yeah, we knew after Randy and Edge went 37 minutes that somebody's time was going to get clipped. I never thought it was going to be, you know, for the biggest belt on the show that night.
You never know.
Yeah.
Never.
Do you think, Shane, going forward, as Dave just brought it up, that we're going to see more from Randy Orton and Edge? Because the forum for that match that they had at WrestleMania probably took away from the match, meaning it was obviously physical. Obviously, both men did a tremendous job. It was very long. It was 37 minutes. And you didn't have those live crowd reactions, which probably would have added something to that match and made it not feel like it was 37 minutes.
Oh, no doubt. That was the match to me that was going to be the most affected by the empty arena match, because that match was all about emotion. That feud was about emotion. I mean, when Randy turned on Edge, there were like, and I was there then, there were people crying in the audience. And we caught them on camera. We didn't catch all of them on camera, but there were people crying. And so that was a story, you know, it was a great emotional story. But if there's nobody there to give you that emotion, you lose a big part of it. So that was the one match. And AJ and Taker was a close second, but, you know, of course they went with the Boneyard thing. But that was the one match, I think, above all the others that was going to be affected by not having the audience. That being said, I think they went out there and beat the piss out of each other for 37 minutes, you said.
Yeah.
So I think circumstances considering, I'm not going to knock anybody on anything on these shows, any of these live arena shows, no matter what company is putting them on.
Yep.
Going out there, working in front of, not in front of a crowd, and the exact opposite, working without a crowd is tremendously hard. So,
yeah. But
but I think they still told a really great story. Yeah, it might have been a little bit of the Irishman, you know, a little lengthy, but got short matches, and sometimes you got long ones. And I think there's still more for this story to be told.
Yeah.
I doubt seriously it's done.
Speaking of long, WrestleMania was 2 nights long this weekend. And it was something, actually, I'm sure you saw and remember, Shane, that people brought up and speculated on either last year or the year before, that WrestleMania might be better off going 2 nights. Now, as you know, over the last few years, WrestleMania has become an epic saga over its single Sunday night presentation, going as long as 5 or 6 hours. And that, too, has a strain on some fans. After now being forced into the situation where WrestleMania was placed over 2 nights, a whole weekend, Saturday, Sunday, I'll tell you, as a fan, it was awesome. Going forward, do you think that's something that should be considered or will be considered a 2-night extravaganza as opposed to historical 1-night WrestleMania?
I'm going to say yes to both of that. I think it will be considered, and I think it should be. I'm like you, you know, and there's a lot of people, you know, a lot of things that happen at WrestleMania Day that are done from a business standpoint. Now, the WWE has made more money than anybody in this business by far. So I can't question their business decisions. You know, normally they're doing something for a reason. I like this format. I like the 2-night format, and I personally would not mind seeing that happen again. Now, what does that mean for NXT TakeOver? What does that mean for Hall of Fame? Who knows? But 2 nights of WrestleMania didn't bother me at all.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. It makes it much more digestible. So you got 2, 3, 4 hour blocks over 2 nights. You've got a very long intermission. And it actually, I think, gives more meaning to the smaller things, I guess you could say, that happen on both shows, because you can step back and look at it and say, oh, you know what? It's not necessarily about which night was better than the other night, but you're able to process, I guess you could say, what you did see a bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of different factors that go in, more than any of us know. But going forward, I'm very interested to see what happens next year and the years going forward.
You know, it's fascinating.
Yeah, because
go ahead, Dave.
Just like last year in New York, Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins opened the show. You know that by the time that the triple threat over was done in the main event, Brock was probably back home in Minneapolis sleeping. It was like a 6.5 hour show.
I think doesn't he live in Canada now? I think he actually was already back in Canada.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Either way, he was home and in bed, I'm sure, by the time that show was over.
I think Nakamura went back to Japan and was there before. Yeah, I mean, they're long shows. They're long for everybody. Trust me, they're longer for us than they are for anyone.
Yeah.
We had to get up early and all that stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's production costs and all these kind of other factors that would increase with it being a 2-day affair. But who knows? Like I said, I'm interested. I bet it's on the table. I bet there are going to be discussions with people, like I said, above all of our grades combined, that are going to have those discussions and see what happens going forward.
Yep. You know what I always found interesting is you guys do such a great job with the elaborate staging and setting and converting an arena or stadium rather for WrestleMania. And as you said, there's a lot of business considerations that need to go into it, but I, for one, would love to see you get more than one night out of it, from a visual standpoint. Yep. Just going back to the same place. And you guys have already done it with the SmackDown, NXT, Hall of Fame, Raw, all emanating from the same arena in the same city. So the model, I guess, is sort of there. The question, though, is what do you do with ticket sales? What are your labor costs? All those other factors that obviously go into the ultimate decision. But from this peril, I guess, or from this situation we're in now, has come opportunities to look at other ways of presenting things. And WWE did a tremendous job of that with their 2-night presentation of WrestleMania this past weekend. And from a fan standpoint, we appreciate everything the company did, everything you did, everything you guys are going to do. And the question that's out there, though, is what is next? And I don't know that anyone has an answer, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape is definitely changing. I mean, Monday Night Raw, I tweeted about this last night, at Shane Helms tweeted about this. There's a lot of people getting opportunities that might not have got those opportunities before. And good for them. There's going to be a lot of sink and swim for a lot of talents. And that's how success is made. That's how stars are born. There's been a lot of great things that have happened in this industry just by circumstance, just by things that have happened. So there's going to be, like I said, new talents given opportunities, and we'll see how they handle those things. But the landscape's going to change. I think the landscape for a lot of businesses is changing after once we get on the other side of this thing.
Folks, we're live. It's the Pro Wrestling Report reaction. Shane Helms is our guest, and thank you for joining us live all across our social media channels and on Fight TV as well. Tomorrow night on Fight TV, Oriental Wrestling begins with their 3-night weekly broadcast. You can find more information about that right now at fight.tv. Shane, since you've become a WWE producer, how has your social media changed?
Not much. I'm still kind of
not what you say, but what you hear from people. Because I think you guys have to play punching bag a lot of times for the fans.
Yeah. There's a couple every now and then. There's a pretty popular comedian that wanted to air his grievances at me, and I was like, that's not my. I'm not your therapy pillow. That's basically was my point on it, and that happens. But being in wrestling, being a celebrity of any kind, you're going to have a degree of people coming at you, from whether they're trolls or whether they really believe it or not. Who knows? But yeah, there's always these questions. Why are they doing this? I'm like, I don't know. That's not my area. I don't know why. With an entity as big as the WWE, there's so many branches out there that I have nothing to do with. But there will be somebody asking me about it for sure. I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, that's part of it. I was one of the first pro wrestlers on social media, so I've been dealing with this forever. And Dave will tell you, I think Dave even has given me some fatherly advice, to tone it down every now and then. And,
Well, he is 65.
if I was
so.
wiser, I would take that advice, but I'm not always.
It's only because I care, man. That's all that it is.
I know, and I do appreciate it. So yeah. I try to tone down. There's not as many F-bombs. I think I use I try to censor myself a little bit, but that just comes with kind of being a dad too. My kid's going to read this mess one day, but I'm still a goofball at heart and an entertainer at heart. I think most of my social media is just me trying to make people laugh anyway. So.
and the one thing I've learned through engaging with Shane at times on social media, whether it be his Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, much like Al Snow, you never want to get into a war of words or wit with these guys, because you're always going to wind up on the losing end. Every time with Shane, I have always wound up on the losing end.
So now you know. There's only one. And two, I think exactly. I work with a lot of people in the business that are on social media, and how they are on social media is not how they are in real life. I'm exactly the same, and I stand by that. I don't have a social media character or anything like that. Even if I'm promoting Highway to Helms, my podcast, whatever, I'm exactly the same on there. It doesn't really benefit me to be any different. Some people maybe it does. Some people maybe they should be different. But who I am on there is kind of who I am in real life.
Yeah. And Highway to Helms was one of the very first wrestling podcasts out there as well, wasn't it, Shane?
Yeah. Back in 2010, I was breaking in the top 10 on iTunes weekly, and but mine was a video pod, and then I had an accident and broke my face apart, which I don't suggest, by the way. And kind of stopped doing it. I actually, too, Dave knows this story. Steve Austin called me and asked me for advice on doing his podcast. So I said, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to compete with Stone Cold, but I need
leave on a high note,
right? I still love doing it. Yep.
Well, Shane, thank you. It should go without saying, but, thank you for not only joining us here on the show, but giving a little bit more insight for the fans and the viewers out there. And thank you for all that you have done, not only in your illustrious wrestling career, but the sacrifices you're making to bring us tremendous entertainment on a week in and week out basis. We don't say thank you enough, and thank you. I will speak for every wrestling fan out there and say thank you. And we look forward to what's next. It's as challenging as these times are in professional wrestling, they're exciting times. I would say more exciting for us than you, in a better way than you would experience, because the excitement on your end is, am I going somewhere next week? But the uncertainty has caused change and has caused new directions and has caused things to happen that ultimately have been tremendous. And we said, just like you did, when this pandemic started, nobody could do wrong. No company, no wrestling company could do wrong. No show would suck, no show would be bad, because of the effort that is being put forth to bring us the product that we're seeing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And at the end of the day, like a lot of people across the world, we're just trying to make the very best of a bad situation. And that's all. That's at the end of the day, that's all we can do. We got to get through it.
Well, Shane Helms, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck to you. Hope you and your family remain safe and healthy down there or up there in North Carolina. And thank you for joining us here on Reaction tonight. We look forward to having you on again soon.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bud.
You. Well, there's no need for us to say, oh, there he is. Why is he still crying? Folks, this has been the Pro Wrestling Report Reaction. David, Shane Helms, our guest tonight. What a way to do it live on a Tuesday.
You know what? What's awesome about Shane is, as amazing of an in-ring performer as he has been, always looked out for us as well.
Yes.
He's been a big part of shenanigans with us, over the years. And he's been a part of Blizzard Brawls and other GLCW events. Always a stand-up guy. And, he's one of the few guys that when he says something, there's no hidden agenda. No. He absolutely means it.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Shane, for joining us. Thank you to all of you for joining us live on Fight TV and across our social media channels. We are going to be live with you again tomorrow night with another brand new edition of the Pro Wrestling Report Prime Time going into AEW Dynamite. So we'll be on live at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. In the meantime and in between time, as Shane said, you can follow him on Twitter at ShaneHelmsCom and myself at Damian Nelson and that guy at Dave Exotic. I get that right?
No. That's my other alias account. That one isn't for wrestling. It's at David Hero. 2 hours. Oh, I have multiple everything.
Folks, for that one. This is Damian Nelson saying thank you so much for joining us here for PWR Reaction. We'll see you tomorrow night on Prime Time.